My son and I both saw him. That's the part I keep coming back to. The old truck on the side of the road. The body slumped against the glass. The way he didn't move when our headlights passed over him. We turned around. Less than a minute later, and he was gone. For as long as I can remember, I've been collecting stories that don't fit. Ghosts, UFOs, strange creatures, glitches in reality, the unexplained and the deeply unsettling. For decades, I've sought out these stories, listened to the people who experienced them, and written them down. I'm Scott Wejmar, and this is The Ghost Collector. This next story was shared by Damien, who explained that he lived in a small rural farming community when he and his son saw something odd. At the time, my son was 17. He had several friends who lived way out in the country, and because he didn't have his license yet, I was constantly giving him rides back and forth to their houses. He didn't have his license mostly because we lived close to the school and close to the places he usually liked to hang out, so there hadn't been a big rush. But that also meant that whenever he needed to go somewhere outside of town, I was usually the ride. Most parents know that stage. Your kid is old enough to have a social life that runs later than yours, but not quite old enough to drive himself home. So you become the chauffeur. It's no big deal. It gets a little annoying sometimes when you find yourself up wide awake because your kid needs to be picked up from a friend's house somewhere down a dark country road. That was the situation on this particular night. It was late, around 1 in the morning. It might have been summer break or close to it, because the late hour wasn't a big deal as if it would have been on a school night. Still, it was later than I normally like to be out. I remember that tired, slightly irritating feeling of having to go back out after I'd already settled in for the night. I drove out to pick him up, like I'd done many times before. Nothing unusual happened on the way there. I got my son, he climbed in, and we started back home using the same familiar route we always used. To get back to our house, we first had to pass through a small rural farming community, and we were on a well-traveled two-lane road on the outskirts of that little town. Not a lonely dirt road, not some forgotten farm lane. A normal road, a road I knew well, a road I drove all the time. And maybe that's why what we saw stood out so strongly. As we were driving along, my headlights picked up a vehicle parked on the side of the road. An old Chevy pickup. Not just old in the way a work truck gets old. This was a classic. If I had to guess, I would place it somewhere around 1958. That era of Chevrolet pickup. Rounded lines, old body style, the kind of truck people restore and take to car shows. And this one looked beautiful. Almost too good. It was stock, and it looked brand new. That's one of the first things that struck me. It wasn't rusted out, it didn't look abandoned. It didn't look like something that had been sitting beside a country road for years. It looked cleaned, solid, maybe even freshly restored. The kind of old truck you notice if you're into those vehicles. And I am. I like old Chevys. I always notice them. That's part of why the truck bothered me immediately. I drove that road all the time. I knew what was normally parked along it, what houses had what vehicles, what equipment sat near which driveways, what belonged there and what didn't. And this truck didn't belong. And it was parked oddly, too. The passenger side was pushed up into the bushes along the shoulder, almost wedged there. Not violently, exactly. There was no obvious damage. It didn't look like it had been crashed. But it was too far over. The position was strange enough that both my son and I looked at it as we passed. And that's when we saw the man. Inside the truck, in the driver's seat, there was someone slumped against the driver's side window. A man. His head was tilted awkwardly. His body was leaned over toward the glass. His mouth was open. He had what my wife and I call a Wolfman Jack haircut, which is a bit of a greasy pompadour and sideburns. There was no blood, although when I think back now, I can't be sure. It's almost as if the memories in black and white were in very faded colors. There was no broken windshield, no damage to the truck or surroundings. But there was something about the way he was sitting that made one thought come to mind. He looked dead. Not asleep, not drunk, not resting, but dead. There are certain positions the human body takes that immediately feel wrong, even if you can't explain why, even if you only see it for a second as you drive past. Your brain recognizes something in the stillness, something in the weight of the body, something in the open mouth, the angle of the neck, the absolute lack of movement. The man in the truck had that look. I saw it, and my son saw it too. We passed the truck, and for a few seconds neither of us said much. It was one of those moments where your mind tries to catch up with what your eyes had just taken in. We drove a few hundred yards past, and then I started thinking, did I really see that? I said something first, something like, "Hey, did you see that? Did you see that truck?" My son said yes. I said, "Did you see that guy?" He said yes. I said, "Did that guy look dead to you?" He said yes. Not maybe, not I don't know. But yes, he had seen it too. And that changed everything. It's one thing to catch something strange out of the corner of your eye when you're tired and driving late at night. It's easy to second guess yourself. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe it was just someone sleeping. Maybe the angle made it look worse than it was. But when the person sitting next to you saw the same thing and had the same exact reaction, it becomes much harder to dismiss. We started talking it through. The truck was weird. The position was weird. The man inside looked wrong. And there was something else too, something harder to describe. The truck had almost an ethereal quality to it. I know that sounds strange, but it was glowing. Not glowing like a ghost in a movie, not transparent, not surrounded by fog, nothing dramatic like that. It just seemed to have a faint presence around it. Maybe it was the moon, I don't know. It was a kind of unnatural clarity, as if it was slightly more lit than it should have been. Almost like it didn't quite match the darkness around it. And we were in the country. There weren't any street lights, no house lights, but that truck glowed. And that was the part that stayed with me. The truck looked real, but it also didn't feel real. It had a wrong feeling, like it had somehow slipped into the scene from somewhere else. My son and I are both naturally curious, and we decided we wanted to go back and have another look. And that's the part of the story I keep coming back to. Because I think we did what most people would tell themselves they'd do. We didn't just keep driving and pretend it was none of our business. We didn't ignore it. We didn't shrug it off as something strange on a country road. We decided to make another pass. The road layout allowed us to take a series of turns and loop back around. It wasn't a long detour, just enough to get off the road, circle around, and come past the same spot from the other direction. The whole thing took less than a minute. And during that time we were watching, we were wide awake, very alert. Whatever tiredness had been in the car before was gone. I expected to come back and see the truck still there. We were just going to drive by slow and get a better look before deciding if anything needed to be done. Maybe we would call 911. Maybe we would shine our headlights on it and realize the man was just passed out, or asleep, or maybe it was even a mannequin or just some weird late-night prank. There were normal explanations available. Uncomfortable ones, maybe, but normal. We completed the loop and came back onto the same stretch of road. And the truck was gone. Not moved farther down the shoulder, not pulled into a driveway, but gone. The entire spot was empty. No Chevy pickup, no man slumped in the driver's seat, no taillights in the distance, no engine noise, no vehicle turning away, nothing. And we could see both directions down the road. That's important. This was flat country, the kind of place where headlights are visible from far away. If an old truck had pulled out, driven off, we should have seen it. But we didn't. And maybe even stranger, there was no evidence that it had been there at all. Remember, the passenger side had been pushed into the bushes. There should have been some sort of disturbance or indention. Bent branches, freshly crushed weeds, tire marks on the dirt shoulder. Something. But we passed that spot again, and there was nothing. No indentation, no tracks, no broken bushes. just the same roadside we'd driven past 100 times before. And we saw that it had vanished in the time that it took to make a quick loop around the block. I'm convinced we saw something from a long time ago. Not necessarily a ghost in the traditional sense, not a spirit waving from the roadside, not some haunted figure trying to deliver a message. More like a replay, or a scene, a fragment. Something that may have happened on that road decades earlier, for reasons nobody remembers now. Maybe it was an accident, maybe it was a medical emergency, maybe a man pulled over in his truck one night and died there alone. Maybe the truck really did exist once in 1958 or 62 or 70, and whatever happened in that spot left an impression. Or maybe it was in the past exactly. Maybe it was one of those moments where reality doesn't line up cleanly, where, for a few seconds, two versions of the same place overlap. The road as it is now, and the road as it was then. And if you happen to be driving through at the wrong time, you see something that you were never supposed to see. A truck that is gone before you can reach it. A dead man who may have been dead for 50 years. Damien's story leaves us with a haunting image. An old ghostly Chevy truck on the shoulder of the road, and a man who may have not belonged there at all. But sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see. Sometimes it's what you hear. This next story takes us inside a Las Vegas motel room, where late one night, our submitter, John, heard something terrifying that he still can't explain. The story will be told by Mark Ivanoff, a friend of the show.
I wanted to share something that happened to me about 30 years ago in Las Vegas. It still gives me chills when I think about it. I was in my 20s, just starting a long-distance relationship. She lived far away and we'd meet up in different cities for a quick weekend together. One time she suggested Vegas. I'd only been once before. She'd been more than a few times and knew her way around. We didn't have a plan, didn't have a room. We just showed up. She had a friend there, Jill, and Jill's boyfriend, Kevin. They were already in town and offered to let us crash in their hotel room for the night. We got in super late, met up with them, and the four of us wandered the strip for a while. Eventually we crashed in their double room, grateful just to have a place to sleep. The next night was more of the same. Cheap casinos, cheap drinks. Kevin was into blackjack, and we ended up at Casino Royale, a dump even by the 90s Vegas standards. He started playing a promotional game. Win a blackjack, get a coin. Collect 21 coins, and get a free room. Well, Kevin went on a tear. I don't know how, but he ended up with 42 coins. That meant 2 free rooms just like that. We were all celebrating, drinking, stumbling up and down the strip, and eventually we called it a night. My girlfriend and I took one of the free rooms and passed out. But somewhere deep into the night we woke up. At first I couldn't even tell why. Then I heard it. The screaming. Blood-curdling. Non-stop. A woman's voice. High-pitched. Panicked. Real. We laid there, frozen, listening. Was someone being attacked? Stabbed? Murdered outside our door? My girlfriend reached for the phone. Dead. Completely useless. I don't know if you remember what the Casino Royale was like back then, but the hotel part, it wasn't much more than an old decaying motel with a new facade on the front of it. Rooms were practically giveaways, and it felt like it. It took everything I had to get up and look through the peephole. The hall was empty. But the screaming, it kept coming. It moved, up and down the hallway, like it was right there in front of our door. You could hear footsteps pounding along with it, but there was no one there. I slowly unlocked the door. A few other guests were already peeking out of their rooms too, eyes wide, faces pale. We all looked at each other, silently asking, "Are you hearing this too?" Someone whispered, "Did anyone call the front desk?" More shaking heads. Our phone's dead. Same here. And still, The screaming continued. And then, something shifted. I realized the screams were overlapping, slightly out of sync, but the same voice, layered over itself, like a recording, or an echo. And then it all began to fade. The screams, the stomping footsteps, like someone was slowly dragging the volume dial down. No other doors opened. No one came. We all quietly closed our doors and locked them. I looked out our window for what felt like hours, scanning the street for police cars. Nothing. In the morning, we got the hell out of there. No breakfast, no goodbye. I still think about it sometimes, what we heard. Not just me. Not just my girlfriend. All of us. I wonder if we weren't hearing a person in pain, but something else. Something stuck in that place. Like a residual scream, still bouncing around the hallway years after it started. And you know what? I'm not even sure that old hotel is still standing. But I wouldn't sleep there again if you paid me. Thanks for letting me share.
Some stories leave you with a sound you can't get out of your head. For John, it was that scream, somewhere down the hallway of a Las Vegas motel, with no explanation, no source, and no one around who seemed to know where it came from. But our next story moves us out of that hallway and onto a dark mountain highway, where a possible hitchhiker appeared in a place, and in a way that still doesn't quite make sense. This happened on Highway 108, coming down from the Pinecrest Lake Resort one night. It was about 10 o'clock, maybe a little after, and my family and I were driving home through the mountains. If you know that stretch of road, you know how different it feels at night. During the day, Highway 108 can feel busy and familiar. Cabins, pine trees, little mountain towns, cars pulling boats or heading up for the weekend. But at night, it changes. The forest presses in closer. The curves feel sharper. The road signs flash out of the dark for a second in your headlights and then vanish behind you. Every little place you pass, Long Barn, Miwok, Twain Harte, Crystal Falls, feels like a small island of light surrounded by miles of black timber. We were coming through Miwok village when we saw him, a man standing on the side of the road. He was hitchhiking. That alone was unusual enough to make me notice. You still see hitchhikers in the mountains once in a while, but not like you used to, and almost never at night. Not standing along Highway 108 in the dark, with nothing around him but trees, asphalt, and occasional passing car. He looked to be about 30 years old, a white male, nothing ghostly about him. He was wearing a blue shirt, black shorts. That's what made him stick in my mind. He looked completely normal, but he also looked completely out of place. He had his arm out, trying to catch a ride. We passed him. There was a brief moment of that uncomfortable calculation you do when you see someone like that. Should we stop? Is he in trouble? Is it safe? Is he just trying to get somewhere? Why is he out here at 10 o'clock at night? But we kept going. A few minutes later, we pulled off the main highway into Twain Harte. We weren't stopping for food or gas. We just wanted to do a quick drive-by of our cabin. We had Airbnb renters staying there. And when you own a place in the mountains, especially a rental, you sometimes get that little nagging thought in the back of your head. I wonder if everything's okay. I wonder if they're having a raging party. I wonder if there are too many cars in the driveway. So we took the business route that runs roughly parallel to the highway and drove past the cabin. No party, no crowd, nothing out of the ordinary. We didn't get out, we didn't go inside, we didn't even stop. It was just a slow pass, a quick check, and then we headed right back onto Highway 108. The whole detour could not have taken more than 4 or 5 minutes. Then we got back onto the highway and continued west. A few minutes later, we were near the town of Crystal Falls, and there he was again. The same man, standing on the side of the road. Blue shirt, black shorts, hitchhiking. At first, my brain didn't quite accept what I was seeing, because that couldn't be right. We'd seen him back in Miwok village, and now we were seeing him again 7 miles away. 7 miles on a mountain highway. After only a few minutes, I remember having a little mental jolt where you try to force an explanation into a place before the weirdness has time to settle in. Maybe someone picked him up right after we passed him. Maybe a car stopped immediately. He got in, and that driver happened to be going the same direction. Maybe the driver took him several miles down the road and then dropped him off right before we came through Crystal Falls. That's possible. I know it's possible. But the timing would have to be almost perfect. A car would have to stop for him within seconds of us passing. He would have had to get in quickly, and then they would have had to continue quickly down the road while we were taking our little detour through Twain Harte. Then they would have had to drop him off in Crystal Falls just before we came along. And somehow, in all of that, we never noticed the car. We never saw him get picked up. We never saw anyone pull over. We just saw him in one place, and then impossibly soon saw him in another. The second time he looked exactly the same, just standing there, arm out, waiting. It wasn't the kind of thing where you slam on the brakes and yell out, "That was a ghost." But we did talk about it. We did say, "Hey, that's the same guy. How did he get down here so fast?" It's the sort of thing that lodges in your mind before you can almost explain it. You can build a perfectly reasonable version of events if you allow every detail to line up just right. But then you think about the road. You think about the distance, and you think about the time. You think about that blue shirt and those black shorts appearing again in your headlights, 7 miles from where he had just been seen. And the explanation starts to feel thin. I don't know of any phantom hitchhiker stories from that part of Highway 108. At least none that I've heard. And this didn't have any of the classic details. No woman in white, no vanishing passenger, no old tragedy tied to a curve in the road. At least none that I know of. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't glowing. He didn't look dead. He just looked like a regular guy trying to get a ride in the middle of the night. And maybe that's what made it so strange. But I am the kind of person who does notice these things. And we did talk about it. And we did decide to turn around and take one look. In order to do that, we had to turn around and go on the divided highway up a short grade to the top of Twain Harte, and then turn around and head back down towards Crystal Falls. And wouldn't you know it, at the bottom of the grade, where we had seen the hitchhiker, he was gone. I rarely drive that road at night, but when I do, I always keep an eye out for the hitchhiker in blue and black. Before we close tonight, I want to thank Robert for sending in that last story. There's something especially unsettling about road stories like this, the ones that happen late at night when the world feels smaller, darker, and a little less certain. I also want to give a quick thank you to Mark Evanoff, who lent his voice to tonight's Vegas motel story, The Screams in the Hallway. Mark also hosts a podcast called Still Unexplained, where he explores unresolved mysteries from across history, science, true crime, and the stranger corners of human experience. In a lot of ways, it feels like a sister podcast to The Ghost Collector, another place for the stories that don't quite fit anywhere else. So if you enjoy this show, definitely give Still Unexplained a listen. And as always, these are the stories people carry with them. The ones they don't always tell at parties or at work or even to their own families. Ghosts, UFOs, strange lights in the sky, glitches in reality, encounters with people who felt dangerous, wrong, or not quite human. Moments where the world briefly stopped making sense. Some stories are terrifying, some are quiet, some are almost beautiful, and some are just strange enough that years later, you still find yourself asking, what did I actually experience? If you have a story like that, I'd love to hear it. You can send your ghost stories, UFO or UAP sightings, glitch in the matrix experiences, strange encounters, cryptid stories, or anything else that doesn't fit neatly into the ordinary world to Scott@theghostcollector.com. Thanks for listening to The Ghost Collector. I'm Scott Wejmar, and if you've been carrying a story you can't explain, maybe it's time to let someone collect it. Music and sound effects used in this episode were sourced from freesound.org and are licensed under Creative Commons Attribution. Full source details are available at theghostcollector.com. Thanks for listening.